Here are 5 bourbons that you can serve at your Halloween party. Spooky season. So when I think of Halloween, I think of candy. People may think of decorations or costumes. I think of candy. And obviously, being Ty the bourbon guy, I also think of bourbon. And when it comes to pairing, chocolate and bourbon actually go hand in hand together. They're a great combination. It's a great pairing. To me, when it comes to bourbon and trying to pair this with food or anything like that, it can be complex. It can be very difficult to do, and it can be to where you're trying to complement those flavors. So if something's sweet, you're trying to find another sweet whiskey to go along with it, or it can be contrasting. So something's sweet, you're trying to find something with a little bit more spice to kind of balance that back out and bring a different profile. And yes, there's all different types of candy. There's Starburst, Skittles, things like that, but I'm focused on the chocolate. That's all I'm ever focused on, typically. So finding bottles of bourbon that have a chocolate note to them, to me, it's just a natural place to start. For me, when I think of chocolate, when I'm trying to figure out bottles that have that note in it, the first place I typically look is double oaked products. So number 1 is the king of the double oaked bourbon. Woodford Reserve Double Oak was definitely the first double oaked bourbon that I ever saw. I don't know if officially it's been the first ever, but it definitely was the first that I ever saw and the first that I ever tried. For me, at the time when I first tried it, it was something where I had Woodford Reserve. I was familiar with that profile, and then I tried double oaked, and it just changed everything. And when I went and did the distillery tour, at the end of it, they give you chocolate to pair with the double oaked bottle, and it was just, yeah, that's where I realized that this is a perfect pairing. And of course, they had the chocolates available, and of course, I had to buy them all. But I just think it's a great bottle to have. I think it's one that's going to be familiar to a lot of people, and maybe, like I said, maybe they're familiar with Woodford Reserve, the name. Maybe they haven't tried the double oaked, or maybe they have. So whether they're an enthusiast or whether they're a beginner, I think they'll all appreciate this bottle and respect it. All right, number 2, Old Forester 1910. So here's another bourbon that's also a double oaked bourbon, and it's one that also brings those chocolatey flavors and those notes, but it's different in a way than what you would get from Woodford Reserve. So to me, even though both are double oaked products, they are different, and they almost have their own lanes that they're in. I don't necessarily think just because you like one, you're going to like the other, but I still think that they're very good bottles, and I think that there's plenty of people that enjoy both of these at different times. Halloween might be one of those times. And just to clarify, since I keep talking about double oaked, I should probably explain what double oaked bourbon is. When you age bourbon, it has to be aged in an oak container, right? So that's barrel number 1, and that's what it actually matures in. That's what it's aging in. So when you get another barrel, and then you transfer the whiskey from barrel 1 over to barrel 2, and then you let it continue to age in that second barrel, that is a second maturation or double oaked product or double barreling. There's a lot of different names for it, but that's essentially what this is. It's where you are taking something and you're pretty much finishing that bourbon in a secondary cask. And again, I think this is very similar to what we just talked about with Woodford. People are probably going to be familiar with the Old Forester name. They might not be as familiar with the 1910. With this being a sweeter bourbon, I think this is going to be one that a lot of people are going to like, whether they have had Old Forester or not. I just think that sweeter profile along with that candy is just going to be something that interests a lot of people. All right, number 3, Maker's Mark 46. Now, here's another one that's similar to a double oak process, except for instead of putting it into a secondary barrel, what Maker's does is actually age it to be Maker's Mark, what you see in that typical bottle. And then they have French oak staves that they actually drop into the barrel and continue to age it that way. So that gives it a different profile. But again, anytime you're reintroducing a different oak to it or a different element, there's a good chance that it's going to bring some of those sweeter notes out of it, depending on the process, of course. But Maker's 46 is definitely one that I just find over time that just seems to pair very well with chocolate. All right, number 4, Elijah Craig. Now, I actually want to put Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel because of the same reasons. A lot of these notes are pretty familiar within those whiskeys. I think for most people, you'll be able to find this bottle, the Elijah Craig small batch, easier than you might be able to find the Elijah Craig Toasted Bourbon. If you can find the Toasted Bourbon, I would say go that route. If you can't, again, I still don't think you can go wrong with the small batch. And this is a situation where there may not be as many chocolate notes in the small batch, but this is where I was talking about the contrasting flavors. So finding a bourbon that can kind of offset that sweetness, still sweeter naturally because it is a bourbon, but I just really like the combination of Elijah Craig with this. And like I said, for different reasons than I mentioned with the others, I think with the availability of this everywhere, I think the familiarity of it, I think a lot of people are, I mean, you can go to Costco and go get this bottle. So I think it's one that maybe people have seen. I've never been mad to see an Elijah Craig anywhere, even as somebody who's real enthusiastic about bourbon. All right, number 5, New Riff Bottled and Bond. So same type of thing. We're going in the opposite direction, trying to hit on those contrasting flavors a little bit. I love New Riff. I've actually picked New Riff Bottled and Bond out of like, I don't know how many blinds now. Every time I seem to blind this bottle, I've blinded it against other bottled and bonds, put it in a blind against other 100 proofs. I put the single barrel in a blind against other single single barrels. I've tried it a lot of different ways and it still comes out on top for me. And even so, for some reason, New Riff just isn't one that I always think to go to, even though I really enjoy the brand and I really like their products. I think I saw an initial wave where people really seemed to enjoy New Riff when it first came out, and I think it's kind of died down since then. And I think it's probably just the oversaturation of the single barrels, but that's a whole nother video. On top of the actual food pairing and the good whiskey itself, the bottle. The colors on the bottle, just the look of it. If there's one bottle to me that yells out Halloween that I just think is a cool bottle to have at a Halloween party, if there's one bottle out of this whole list that you're gonna go pick up, I would go grab this one, New Riff Bottle in a Bond. I know it's not necessarily available in every single state, but if you do have it available in your state and it's just sitting on the shelf, I don't think you can go wrong with it. It's bottled in a bond, so if you're making cocktails with it, I think it'll be great. New Riff makes an excellent bourbon, so if people are wanting to drink it on the rocks or neat, I don't think you can go wrong there either. And again, just a great option in my opinion. And instead of starting my list with honorable mention, I'm going to end it with it. Eagle Rare, because I never really like to put Buffalo Trace products on my lists because one, you already know about Buffalo Trace. I don't need to tell you about Buffalo Trace products. You know that they're good, all that stuff. They're so hard to find for the majority of people that I just don't like putting it on the list because it's just, for what? I don't know. I don't know what else I could tell you about Buffalo Trace that hasn't already been said. But the reason why I'm choosing to put it on this list is because this bourbon is the one that I actually go to when I'm trying to pair chocolate with any bourbon. If I'm doing any type of food pairing, any type of chocolate pairing, whether it's at home or out at a restaurant or whatever the case is, if Eagle Rare is available, that is the bottle that I'm going to. And it's one that I just enjoy. There's something about it. Back when it was readily available and I could just go to the store and go grab it, pairing this with chocolate candy or even like chocolate chips or anything chocolate related, there's just something about it that works so well. And it's one of my favorites. So not on the official list, but it's got to be in there somewhere. So that's it. I hope you all have a very safe Halloween. I know I myself will be enjoying time with the kids, seeing them all dressed up, take them around, get a whole bunch of candy, of course pay the dad tax, still have some fun with the family. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. You might as well like, subscribe, do all the things, and now follow me on Patreon. Links down below in the description, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.